You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Happy New Year, everyone. And welcome to, I guess, the second episode of 2021 for Global Trade This Week, brought to you by Cap Logistics. I'm Pete Mento from the TradeGeek podcast, and with me is Mr. Doug Draper from the Uptime Logistics podcast. I was unable to join last week because of technical difficulties, and to be honest, I was still suffering from COVID-19. I had the cocoa, I had the vid, the pandy finally got me, but don't worry. As miserable as it was, it did not take this fat man down. So I'm back with a vengeance and ready to spew forth all of my useless information. Thank you, Doug, for working with Ian last week and for carrying on without me. It was a hell of a show. I really do appreciate that, man. Did you have a great holiday?
I did. And first and foremost, I'm glad that you're back in action. That's nothing to, that's some serious shit you went through. And I'm glad that you're sitting here and feeling a lot better. So kudos to that. Yeah. And I said yes, absolutely. And I said you were on assignment. So I figured you'd come back with something a little bit more glamorous, but anyway, yeah, good holiday. Good holiday. I was saying we just got some skiing in. So was up on the hills the last couple of days and enjoying some fresh snow and blue skies. So that's what Colorado's all about in the winter.
You've got this. Your life is much more glamorous than mine. You know, I've spent the past couple of days when I'm not. I've had a couple of really ugly deadlines for clients, but when I haven't been doing that, I have been binge watching my favorite television shows. I got caught up in the 100 on Netflix because I am a nerd. And I've been watching a number of Lollapaloozas, 94 and 95, while I am sober, which has been brutal on me, part of the whole New Year's thing. I know you've been wondering. So go ahead and ask.
All right. So, Pete, what's your New Year's resolution for 2021?
Son of a bitch, Doug. So I am what you might call a powerfully built man. I tip the scales at a thunderous amount. Now, don't get me wrong. It is a pile of twisted steel and sex appeal. I'm a big man. I am catnip to all the ladies, but I am hopelessly devoted to one, and I need to lose some weight. So I have done something drastic, and I've gone to a doctor and a nutritionist, and these awful bastards have put me on a diet where I'm eating things mostly out of powdered packets. So I get up in the morning and I have like this powdered packet of the sports drink and the protein drink. And then I have a powdered entree that I do in a microwave. And then at night I have like a regular meal, I guess. But I've told myself, and I can't drink for a while, which when you're in this industry, it's one of the only things that keeps me from being homicidal is the occasional cocktail. And I don't live in Colorado, so I can't smoke myself stupid. But I've told myself to keep myself from going crazy, Doug, that I'm basically going to, because we're about to go into another lockdown, I'm convinced, that I'm basically an astronaut on the International Space Station in my penthouse here in Manchester. Do you remember how like the astronauts ate Tang and all their meals were powdered? So that's how I'm keeping myself from going crazy, is that I'm basically living my life up here in my space station, eating all my powdered meals. We'll see how long that keeps me. What about you, Doug? What are you going to lose, like those last 2 pounds that are driving you crazy?
Yes, that's a great question. To be honest with you, I'll answer that two different ways. One, this is going to sound kind of corny and maybe Coloradish, but try to be more present when I'm listening to people talk, right? Yes, thank you very much. So so I don't do this. I'm like, yeah. What's the point? So trying to look people in the eye and be more present. I can turn that on and off as needed. Excuse me. And then I can turn it back on. So there you go. But the funny thing is, was 2 years ago, we were at a party and we were going around the room with some New Year's resolutions. And I'm dead serious. my wife comes over and she said, you know what I think I'm going to do this year? I'm going to drink more vodka. And everybody was like, that is one power move of a New Year's resolution. And she didn't really keep it, maybe a little bit. But anyway, that was just the opposite of what most people would say for New Year's resolutions.
I fully support that. I think that's an excellent resolution. I'm wondering, when you decided to be more present, were you riding your mountain bike in your all natural fibers workout outfit on your way to get an acai bowl while you were listening to Rusted Root?
Yeah.
If that is the Colorado shit I have ever heard, Doug.
Yes, I know. I knew I was going to take a beating. But to answer your question, Pete, because I always try to do that, I was on a 2-seat chairlift, and you can't have two people on there unless you're from the same family. So I'm all by myself, and I'm going up the hill, and nothing but blue skies, about 3 inches of snow the night before, powder everywhere. And I'm like, this is perfect. You can't. It's beautiful, and it's a privilege to live in Colorado. So at that moment, when I had my 3.5 minutes going up the lift, that's when I thought of it.
Well, I'm going to help you to be more present, Doug. I'm going to help you. I'm going to be your spirit guru. What you need is an oversized whiskey soaked East Coaster who can't find enough time in the day to be a prick to people to help you with this. I think the next time we do the show, we're going to have everybody that is in the booth on video so they can see just how crunchy our production staff is. When we were about to come on, I was wondering if Keenan has to buy special headphones so he can hear through all the hair and all the beard hair and his giant like fluffy hat that he wears. It's like the cast from Godspell is putting this thing on. It's amazing just how much hair and stubble. And I imagine, all natural flavor is coming off of those three right now as they record this. By the way, guys, I wore my RISD sweatshirt today, Rhode Island School of Design. I'd like to give the kids music to listen to. This week, it is David Byrne and the Talking Heads. I demand that you go on your Apple device, and I know you make fun of me for listening to the iTunes. I don't care, but get the essentials to the Talking Heads and listen to all of it. It is life-alteringly good music. And with that, Doug, let's get to it. Let's get to our first interaction year. And why don't you tell me what our first topic is for today? I can't wait.
Yeah. Well, I hate to start the new year off by using the term nuclear, but I'm going to. So, we might as well keep with the 2020 theme. But no, it's going to talk about nuclear verdicts and the trucking industry. And everybody's kind of, and what that means for you and I as a consumer, and what that means for the industry as a whole. And I think, there's tons of statistics that I'm not going to get into because I'll misstate them or whatever. But the bottom line is nuclear verdicts, which has been defined as $10 million or more on a verdict for against a trucking company. Those have escalated, right? I could say it's X number and the percentages and all that kind of stuff, but everybody knows it's gone nuclear. And it's really two things that cause it. It's, emotion and opportunity. And I know some lawyer friends, so I'm not going to disparage them at all, but it's the emotion would be humans and the individuals and the jury in some instances. And the opportunity would be for the lawyers and the opportunity to make a ton of money. And what's transpired from what we've seen is if you can get a dramatic story about a incidents on the road, it could be catastrophic or fatal. You get that story and that situation in the hands of an emotional jury, and the verdicts are going to be astronomical. And I think the lawyers over time have just realized that and taken advantage of it. Excuse me. And something else that's come around that doesn't get a lot of press is fraud and scams, where not only are people realizing that you can get a lot of money on an individual basis, and so there's been more and more fraud where people are literally staging accidents in cohorts with an individual looking to benefit from the situation, and lawyers that are looking to do that. So I'm not saying that it's always that way, but if you look at stories that are out there, is that the nuclear verdicts are increasing. And to be honest with you, they're probably not going to go away. And what does that mean, right? So I won't go down a wormhole about all that, but they're out there. So what that means is that one of the shows we talked about before was kind of the death of the modern day cowboy, right? So what that means is insurance rates are going up. You got to make sure you can cover your tail if you're going to have one of these verdicts. So the way you do that is get more insurance. And with insurance companies are raising premiums and all that kind of stuff. So what I feel is going to happen is some of these, renegade cowboys that love the trucking industry for the purest sense of it is they're out and about and they're driving the country and they're riding their horses are just going to get fed up. They're getting close to retirement and they're just going to be fed up. And it'd be a hell of a lot easier to go drive for a Swift or a Walmart or somebody like that and just have all that bullshit go away. So I think you're going to continue to see some of these smaller mom and pops just drop off. And it's going to create some capacity issues, I think, primarily on the spot market. I think we mentioned that before. So I think that's going to happen. And then, so are you and I going to see a pinch of it, Pete? Maybe, right? I mean, $20 million verdict to a trucking company. How long does that tail down into an increased rate on the transportation that would then mean an increase in our cost of a Big Mac sandwich? I think it's probably pretty far off in the future, but I think we will see a little bit of it. But I don't think the consumer is going to really care. It's going to be the logistics managers kind of negotiating with the trucking companies to say, I don't really care what the rate increase is, but I'm going to try to minimize it. So nuclear verdicts, they're not going away. It's all about emotion and opportunity. I think it's going to continue to push the modern day cowboy out of the market, and the big trucking companies are going to get bigger. So Pete, there's my first prediction for 2021. What are your thoughts on that one?
People probably don't know this, but I do get your topics ahead of time, and you get mine, so that we're prepared to have the conversation. And this is a particularly personal response I'm going to give you today. Most people don't know this, but 10 years ago in June, my mother unfortunately died in a tractor trailer accident. While she was texting, she rolled through a stop sign and was hit by a tractor trailer. It was a immediate death. She didn't suffer. But the suffering for me lasted for years while I tried to overcome it, because I was endlessly approached by attorneys who asked me to sue a very small trucking company that had caused me death. Everything that I had read about it, everything I read from the report from the police, and the fact that I just wanted to move on with my life made me not want to engage with a law firm. But when I tell you that dozens and dozens of independent attorneys approached me, that's not an exaggeration. I think you said it very well there, Doug. Not to get too depressing and personal on our first trip back here together, but there's far too much to be gained by individual law firms in suing people in these catastrophic nuclear things that can come out of it for these accidents, where it's not just one person driving a car, they're coming after a corporation for their actions. And I don't know how to fix that. I'm not an attorney, and I know you're not one either. But this seems like an excellent example of where there needs to be some kind of a reform. It's not a company driving that car, it's a person. And I think that this is a place where maybe we have an opportunity to rethink how we maybe manage risk. And that's not going to be popular. But if we're going to keep these people driving and keep transportation costs at a place that are going to be acceptable, we might rethink how we do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that story. I'm not really sure how to segue from that, Pete.
You feel like Casey Kasem when he's like, "They're talking about a dead dog, and now you want me to talk about some happy song?" No, it's okay, man. It was a long time ago. That was just one of those stories. I think it really shows the point that some of these attorneys you're not gonna give them crap about it. I will tell you that I was approached by parasites out of the woodwork that tried everything they could to get me to sue this company, and I wasn't going to do it. So I'll do this segue for you. Here's my first topic. I've been working.
Thank you.
I've been working with I'm here for you, buddy. I've been working with an amazing client lately, where we're focusing on a relatively small customs house broker. And one of the things we've been focusing on is automation. And I ended up talking to some freight forwarders and other brokers and some technology companies about how they're using really interesting automation to basically, Doug, remove people from the transactional data entry part of the business. And, to start this off, I remember when I was a young man working for Panalpina in Chelsea, Massachusetts, still a comedian, going to grad school, and typing in everything into a system or typing everything on a typewriter and endlessly making mistakes. And sometimes having my supervisor tell me, go do it again, and sometimes saying, it's all right, don't worry. But my error rate being part of how I was judged as an employee and getting better and better over time, like a person does, but then getting pretty darn good at it and not making mistakes that often. And now we're in a situation where through OCR technologies and bots and these robotic formations, where it's possible that we can pull all the information off of a document without templates, and then have these robotic processes put it into these operating systems that transportation services use, and really fill them out with incredible accuracy. And I'm wondering at what point that does one of two things: either eliminates, because of a large company's ability to invest in technology, a small company's ability to compete, or gives a small company the ability to compete, but they don't need that many people working for them. Maybe they've got really good technology and they can sell that to smaller people. I think this is one of those disruptive moments that, if done correctly, could be a real fire starter for people. And I think we're right at the beginning of it. And I'm kind of wondering what you think. I think this is across every mode in our business, from warehousing all the way up to the most complicated.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah. I think I don't want to say mundane tasks, but I certainly will. Clerical, data entry, things of that nature. I think the automation, I think you nailed it, right? And maybe right now the big guys can afford it, but like anything else out there with good technology, the price is going to come down. There'll probably be a software as service type of model, and these could already be out there. I don't know enough about it, but the technology will get down to the point where a small guy will be able to take care of it, and that'll definitely help with payroll and having people on staff and the accuracy and everything else. So I think it's coming. I think you're spot on, and I think the small guy is going to be able to engage and benefit from that probably faster than we would think. It's crazy. I had a friend maybe 10 years ago that had a flat screen TV on his wall, and he spent like $4,000 for it. And it was probably a little bit bigger than the monitor you're looking at. Right. And now they're $500 or less. So my whole point is that the technology become more affordable. I think it'll be a software service, but big picture, in this day and age, computers can do a whole lot of that clerical and data entry for sure.
That's inevitable. All right, so hit me with your next shot, man. What's topic number 3 for today?
Yeah, topic 3. It kind of goes along with the automation and a little bit with the insurance piece that we talked about. But I think that virtual reality and augmented reality are really going to take off in the trucking industry, which I know a little bit better than the maritime. So I may throw it your way. But before I get into that, I wanted to and I'm going to read this so I don't screw it up, right? Because you hear all these augmented realities and everything else, and it's kind of like, what does that mean, right? If people say, hey, Bitcoin is cool, 90% of the people are like, I don't get it, right? I don't understand it. I don't really understand it, but it's good. So I wanted to clarify augmented reality. I'm going to is the equivalent of like Snapchat filters, right? You're sitting there goofy and we put some banana ears on you and everything else. So you're still there. You're still present, right. To go back to my New Year's resolution. But there's some augmentation around it, where virtual reality is complete immersion, right? Where you see on the TVs from the holidays, where you put glasses on and you're completely in a different world. So I think that's going to take off tremendously with training. Right. You think of all the airline pilots that they have to go back and do training X number of hours per year, and they get into a simulator and the whole bit. I know that exists out there in the trucking industry, but just like the technology discussion we just had, the cost to be able to have your employees go through that, specifically with drivers, I think it's going to come down. And I think the insurance companies are going to provide or see value in that, to say, Pete, as the truck driver, yeah, you got X number of hours on the road, but we're going to throw you into some scenarios that you'll have to react to, and we can provide advice and guidance on how you're supposed to do that. So I think that is going to look good for insurance companies, which will help out with validating and fighting back on some of these nuclear verdicts. And then on the augmented reality piece of it is, I think that's going to be tremendous in maintenance and kind of on the job, right? When the truck driver's there while he's driving. So the best way I could describe that is, picture a driver putting on a pair of glasses, right? Just like I have now, and they're doing an inspection of their truck, and they're walking around, and the technology tells them, "Oh, you need to check this out because this device has met its limitation on hours of service." And maybe a big red flag pops up literally in their scope of view where they can then quickly rely on it versus a visual check. I think that there'll be some general maintenance on the road where the truck driver can not only be the driver, but he could be a little bit of a safety manager, like I just said, and maybe even a little bit of a mechanic, right? I know a lot of truckers know what they're doing out there, but there are some that barely know how to back up a truck, let alone fix it, right? So you put these glasses on and it'll tell you that your flux capacitor is all jacked up and you need to twist this dial that way or do something else. So that would be the augmented reality piece of it. And that technology is probably pretty expensive nowadays, but I could see some of the larger players be able to do that. And that would be totally sweet. If you're a driver and you put some glasses on and you walk around your truck and it's telling you what to do and what's wrong, and you can quickly reply or respond to that. Again, insurance companies, I think, will appreciate that as well. So there you go. Augmented and virtual, I think, are going to be big topics in the near future with that industry.
So those are two of my favorite topics when we discuss innovation. Virtual reality and augmented reality. VR is an important part of the whole drone technology that we work with, Doug. When you see how the Air Force is using drones in the combat situation, and then also now how we use drones to deliver medications, deliver medical supplies, deliver things out into oil fields. That's actually a virtual reality situation where someone is entirely eclipsed in another reality while they're using that drone to deliver something. And now we're using virtual reality for the Mars landing. We're going to be handling robotics in a suit where the person will be manipulating the arms and legs of a robot on the surface of another planet in a delay, but not much of a delay. And they'll learn how to use that delay while they're augmenting into that augmented reality. I think it's incredible. And where you have that augmented reality where you're looking at something and they're putting flags up and the such. Just our industry. Think about in a warehouse where someone's looking for something and they'll be able to put the red flag on that box, or aircraft maintenance, vessel maintenance. I also wonder, as we talk more and more about going to a limited drone-like existence on vessels, how they could use this kind of technology to help with vessel repairs, how they could use this kind of technology maybe to do, when you were talking about training people on a tractor trailer, if you have an autonomous tractor trailer, could they have a driver take control of it remotely? Could they have a driver sitting in a virtual space or a control space, say, I'm taking hands-on control of the tractor trailer from my, in Gary, Indiana, and I'll drive it from here like it's a video game wherever it has to go. It sounds far-fetched, but man, I don't think it is anymore. If you can drive a drone over Iraq, I'm pretty sure you could probably drive a truck somewhere in Indiana, right? Who knows? It's a big question, and I think its applicability is incredible. And I've got a feeling that its time has come because of the things you've just talked about with regards to insurance and the liability that goes along with it. But man, what a topic. I wish we had all day to discuss it because the places it can go into, aside from Beat Saber and how much fun that is to play, it's just awesome. It's just awesome. Imagine the training side of it, having someone show somebody how to fill out paperwork or how to do whatever. I watched a video of someone showing someone with virtual reality goggles how to extract a splinter from someone's foot out in the bush in Africa. a doctor showing a medical technician how to do it because they were so far away. But they're like, no, a little more to the left. That's exactly where you want to be. I mean, come on, that's amazing. And that's where this stuff is going. I couldn't agree more, Doug. It's amazing.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see for sure. All right. So we do things in fours around here. So we've gotten 3 down. So you're up, number 4. What do you got?
Yeah. Speaking of numbers. So I love data. I worship at the temple of nerd, and I love big data. The first time I ever really saw it used in a way that made the light bulb go off, I was still at C.H. Robinson, and we used to go to this event at MIT every year. And the idea was to have these have these people at MIT show us an idea that they had, and then they would ask these corporate types to give them more money to take it someplace. And one of the ones that they did is they looked at hashtags and I guess I'd call it metadata about colds that were in Twitter. So they created a heat map of where people were complaining about cold and flu symptoms in North America. And then they created a time stamp that went along with it. And they were able to show how flus and colds were moving across North America. And then they said, we worked with over-the-counter cold and flu companies to actually put more inventory in front of the colds and flus as they were spreading across the country. So they used big mega data to do this. And I just sat back, which I was like, God, it's kidding me. Like, this is awesome, you know? And then when I was working on customs data and I was working with one company at a time, we would pull data from one company at a time, and we would review the data from one company at a time to understand how we could help them to save money and to get refunds. I thought, why don't we take all their data? We have thousands of companies' data. What could thousands of companies' data tell us about things and about importers? Awesome. And then another step forward, we started taking a look at, we found this out when I was at Crane, we could buy the arrival times and the takeoff times of every single aircraft for the past 10 years. Why is that interesting? Well, if one aircraft lands late for British Airways, let's say in London, how does that affect the times of all the other ones that leave? And then how does that affect when that next aircraft lands? There's a ripple effect, right? A butterfly effect. So then we were able to give that to data scientists and understand it. That type of analysis makes so much sense in our world. And there are so many people who are dedicated to that type of big data science in logistics. We don't do enough of it. Most of the data science that's done in supply chain and logistics is done on an individual business basis. There are so many companies, whether it's Ford Motor Company or Walmart or Target, that do, I'm talking like SpaceX and NASA level analysis down to the 10th of a decimal on what's going on with their supply chain. And that stuff is incredible. But why don't we look at this industry? And I think it comes down to the fact that we don't like to share. We really don't like to share our information. You know, we're pretty competitive, man. And we don't like to give data to anonymize it and hand it off to one another. And I think until we find a way to share that data, we're never going to get to where we could be, where this information can really take us to beautiful new places. God, I sound like a geek when I talk that way. But I believe it. Yes. I really do.
You sound like an old codger, but the funny thing is I agree 100% with your last statement, right? In this industry, it's still old school, right? If I share anything with you, Pete, I lose control. And if I lose control of my customer, I lose control of the interaction, and I lose control of the secret sauce that differentiates me from the competitor, Crane, C.H. Robinson, Transplace, whatever, name another carrier out there, because it is somewhat of a commodity business. So I think the old guard, I would agree with you that sharing data has always been bad. But I think that the new evolution of the logistician that's coming through can manage the flow and the goods, not through telephones and trying to be the fastest guy to solve the problem, but through cooperative data sharing, which is exactly what you just said. And so I think we're a couple years out, but the predictive, being able to predict problems, right? Your British Airways. If I can call a customer and say, hey, I know that you're not going to London, but the plane that's going to London, that's going here, that's going to end up in, South Africa, it's going to be about 4 hours late. I just wanted to let you know in advance. That information is powerful, and you're not going to get that without sharing. And the consumer is not going to put up with the fact that I don't want to tell you what my secret sauce is because I could lose business. So your last statement, Pete, spot on. I agree 100%, but it will change. The mindset of this industry will change. And old codgers like you and I are going to fall off and be part of the dinosaur era, and something positive will happen.
Well, you talk about that old codger set. I think that there are organizations that could do this. Like you and I are very, very into the World Trade Centers. And I think maybe the World Trade Center or even CSCMP could say, we'll sign a non-disclosure. We won't say who the business is. Send us everything. And then we'll make it anonymous inside of our servers. Give us all the data and let us do something beautiful with it. I mean, you want to talk about feeling like an old codger. Before we got on today, the screaming herd of 14-year-olds that produce us are talking about, buy more Bitcoin and all. And there isn't on the planet that likes hearing about that. And I'm just like, get off my lawn, screaming at him. Every day I turn into more of an old man who just wants to ruin everything. So I get it. And I think the good thing though, Doug, is that we're all retiring and leaving the business. And I think that those progressive thinking folks, they're going to replace us, and they're going to understand that kind of collaboration is what's best for everybody. So, and with that, I guess I'll hand it over to you, bud.
Yeah, well, I think the ending is better than the beginning because we started with the word nuclear, and we're ending with the word collaboration. So I think that we've come full circle, Pete, and that's a perfect period to end global trade. And this was the very first one of the year, so I'm stoked. I guess we could call it season 2, right? Let's just assume that we didn't get cut. We didn't get cut. The producer said it was worthwhile, so we're in season 2. But global trade this week comes to you every single week, and of course it's put on. And we wouldn't be here without the team at Cap Logistics. They're phenomenal. We give them a hard time, but they do some amazing things behind the scenes. So I want to thank Cap Logistics for making this happen. And Pete, we'll see each other next week on Global Trade This Week. And until then, my friend, have an awesome week.
Thanks, Doug.